It's not a how-to book, although it is a how-to book. It's how you and your organization can solve problems better, unleash a certain creativity.
Yes.
But you're really, at the most basic level, writing a book about how to live. Isn't that right?
Yeah, we think that if you talk to the psychologists, they would call what I call creative confidence self-efficacy. And it's really, I think, the kind of one of the essential ways to have a vital life. And self-efficacy is like this, that you have a sense of the way the world's put together and that you can accomplish what you set out to do in life, right? And so once I understood that I was going to survive, the thing that I really wanted to do was make that my life's work, was to have as many people as possible gain this new kind of living with confidence and confident that they are a creative person.
All right. And you write not only that everybody can be creative, really you're arguing that everybody should be creative. If you're in a rut, if you're in a slump, if you're just following rules, sit up and do something about it. The world, I'm quoting you here, the world needs more creative policymakers, officer managers, and real estate agents.
Everybody can be wildly creative, in my opinion. Yeah, what happens is, you know, most people, as I said, I believe everybody in kindergarten is creative, but by about age 9 or so, you know, people opt out of thinking themselves as creative. Something happens, you know, a teacher says that's not a very good drawing, or you can't play the piano very well, or whatever it is, you're not a dancer, whatever it is. They've confused kind of talent with creativity. And for some reason, that kind of negative critique really sticks with us, and people opt out of thinking of themselves as creative, and so they go about their life saying that. And so by the time they get to adulthood, it's pretty ingrained. And so, but the good news is we really find that if you help somebody and you give them a series of small successes in a creative area, that it comes back, that they actually build that confidence. But you really have to have a kind of immersive experience.
So let's talk about the immersive experience. I want to repeat, you have the D School. It is a unit of Stanford University. Kids go through 10-week courses. You've written a book about this. Right. You have IDEO. There is a much richer body of work available than we're going to be able to get to right now. But I want to plunge in to try to convey some of what the D School does. So why don't you tell us one D School story, the Embrace Infant Warmer?
Sure. So Embrace comes from a class called Extreme Affordability. We have lots and lots of classes at the D School. One nice thing about the D School is everybody kind of opts in. You know, we don't pay the professors. A lot of the students we don't give degrees. And so you're there because you want to be there. So
you're taking time out from attending the business school or the School of Education or the medical school or the engineering school. You take time out from that curriculum to do a project at the D School.
Correct. And then you go back there and get your degree.
Right.
Okay. So in the case of Embrace is in this class, Extreme Affordability, and the students go to India. They go to places like India or Myanmar or Africa, and they look for needs. They look for things that could really solve problems that are meaningful to people. So the Embrace people are looking in hospitals, and they're looking at incubators, because there's so many young children dying because they can't maintain their body weight. But they go into the hospitals and the incubators are not full. I mean, what's the story? You know, they're going to design a better incubator in their kind of first blush. And what they found was that they had to completely reframe the problem. A lot of innovation comes from not problem solving, but deciding what's worth working on in the first place, reframing the problem and then solving it. And so that's what happened here. And so they found that the babies were dying out in the villages, and they couldn't get to the hospital. So
they couldn't keep them alive long enough to get them into a Western incubator.
Exactly. Okay. So what they decided to do was brilliant, was to make this thing that had paraffin wax in it that they could heat up. And then it would keep the kind of, you know, the right 98.6 kind of temperature going long enough for the baby to start eating and start gaining body weight. And so it's just been a huge success. I mean, hundreds of thousands of lives will be saved. And it's from this kind of, we look at it as our process that we call design thinking, where you go out into the world and you build empathy, right, for the people that you're trying to help, whether it could be, Wall Street, executives, or it can be, people in the bush in Africa. But by understanding that, then you can, we call it need finding, you can find a problem that's worth working on, and that's what happened in Embrace.
And so Embrace is now the company that grew out of this.
Yes.
And the product is, and it was extreme affordability. So what does one of these sort of backpacks with heatable paraffin wax cost?
It's a $200 sleeping bag.
So there are sponsors who help to subsidize this.
Yeah, or not, depending, we find that in a lot of these developing world kind of things, we want to be able to really make them sustain and charge full price. We want them to be made in the country.
So there can be a self-sustaining company built on it.
Yeah, so Embrace is a self-sustaining company. We've had lots of them in that class and other classes, but we're in Silicon Valley. The students are able and excited about starting their own companies, and so that's not our role. Our role is not the entrepreneurship part. We're just trying to find really interesting problems that will get the students excited so they'll work on this, on building their confidence. So we'll have lots of projects. If you come to D-School, even in a 10-week class, you'll do lots of projects.
Right. So a little more on design thinking. Here in Creative Confidence, you write that one of the breakthrough, one of the eureka light bulb moment for you who spend your life having light bulb moments, a light bulb moment was that IDEO was not selling designs. What you really had done was develop a methodology,
yes,
which you now call design thinking.
Right.
And I would also note that although IDEO is a great, big, successful, there is money gushing into that company with 500 employees, offices around the world, you're an evangelist about this design thinking. People may buy this book. Students may go to the D-School, but there's also, I just discovered looking at the D-School website last night, there's a free 90-second course in design thinking. Free! Anybody in the world may take it. 90-minute course.
Yeah.
Crash course in design thinking on the D-School website. Just briefly, because this is television, not a book, I'd just like to ask you, I'm just going to name each of the steps, the 5 steps that you name in design thinking, and you tell me what they mean.
Okay.
Empathize.
Empathize means just what we were talking about in Embrace. Instead of sitting in your office and using your big brain to try to come up with ideas about what you want to come up with for your next invention or for your next involvement, wherever it is, we call this thing bias towards action. Go out into the world and be with people. So I gave my students the experience, my present students, their project, and it's improve the experience of taking the train from Palo Alto to San Francisco. So the empathize phase would be ride the train, talk to the conductor, watch people buy tickets, go into people's homes and see how they decide which train to take, look at the signs and how do you get out of the train in San Francisco, but just be in the middle of it and be, open-minded to watching people and see what they do, where they have troubles and what they care about.
Get out of yourself.
Yeah, we have way too much meetings with people sitting around a table talking about things rather than being immersed in the situation so that you can figure out what's going on.
Step 2, define.
Define. So I would say that one of the things that's most unique about design thinking is that the process of defining what the problem is inside of our process. Most processes that I know about for innovation have the problem statement comes here.
Comes first.
Comes first, and then you try to innovate to make something exciting given that problem statement. We try to put the definition stage in the middle of the process. So every time you're going around, you're iterating it in the process, you ask yourself, is there a more interesting project I could be working on here? Meaning redefine. So we redefine the problem as the natural part rather than accepting it.
So that when the kids get to Bhutan, thinking that they don't have enough incubators, they get to the hospital and discover the incubators they have aren't even being used.
Yes.
They redefine the problem as keeping the kids alive between the village and the hospital.
Exactly. So in that same class in extreme affordability, we sent them out to look at the problems of water in India, and some of the students found out that kerosene was a bigger problem in their minds. The kerosene that they burn at night and stuff. And so they did a project that ended up being a solar lantern called Delight. So they were given water, and they ended up coming up with a solar lantern that solved the kerosene problem. Or we have another class called Liberation Technologies, where they go to Africa and they're looking at fire prevention. And when they go into the villages and talk to people, people are not so worried about the fires, although they are, but the reason they're worried about the fires is they're worried about their documents. Their documents are really important and they're really vulnerable in their minds. So the students start a company, that takes computers around and scans everybody's documents and puts them up in the cloud. So the way to look at that is another group might have said, you told me to look at fire prevention, so I'm just going to look at fire prevention, even though I discovered this other thing that's actually a more interesting problem called document protection. Right. And so our process allows you to redefine the problem so that you're working on something more meaningful for the people that you've discovered in the empathy phase.
Right. Okay. Step 3 of 5, ideate.
Ideate. Okay. So now, after you've defined the problem and you have a point of view about what you want to do, point of view is really you have a user group and you have some inspiration. What you need to do is to, in a cyclical way, come up with ideas, right? Somebody said, if you want a good idea, have lots of ideas. And so
and you're presuming a team here, the team would be at the D
school. This is all team. This whole thing is a team sport. I'm not talking about individuals at all. So the team is now going to, in combination with talking to what we call extreme users and people down the middle and stuff, and all the experts they can find, and looking at the state of the art and what else is out there in this new thing that you've just found out, is to come up with as many ideas as you can. It's like the brainstorming phase, right? As many ideas as you can. We group them together. The idea is to really have what we call fluency and flexibility. Lots and lots of ideas just for the sake of lots of ideas, and ideas that are different one from the next, flexible compared to the next one. So now you have this big mass. We have in our process, there's a converging and diverging back and forth. So this is that's a diverging phase. Come up with as many as you can, and the next phase we're going to select.
Okay, and the next phase you call prototype.
Prototype. So we really find, you know how they say a picture is worth 1,000 words? We think a prototype is worth like 1,000,000 words. So if I tell you about my new idea for this new coffee cup, you might not be that interested, right? But if I actually build one with my new, digital warmed whatever coffee cup, and I actually have you try it out, now you're going to help me. You're going to tell me what's wrong with it. Humans are really good at telling you what's wrong with other people's ideas. And so we find that prototype, I define a prototype as painting a picture of the future with your idea in it. So this is a physical thing, but if I wanted to prototype the experience of checking into Stanford Hospital, I can prototype that. I can, with cardboard, build a space, or I can find a place at Stanford, and I can hire actors, and I can pretend, and I can bring in a bunch of public, and I can prototype that and see what happens. We looked at IDEO, we looked at, for Walgreens, we looked at their stores, and one of the things that was clear was that the pharmacist is up in this big glass thing looking down on you, and we wanted to try what it would be like to have the pharmacist down on the kind of level of everybody else across the counter or a table. And so the way we did that was we got a warehouse and we started with cardboard. We started building those things out. Now you could have everybody. Users, the president of the company, the pharmacist, to see whether they were going to be willing to make this new move. And so that physicality of the prototype, that painting the picture of the future so that you can see it. I mean, most of my students, they used to, they'd kind of bring it, we used to design just objects mostly, and they'd bring it in and we'd put a black cloth under it and we'd pull it up. But now, with my students, everybody makes, if you're trying to prototype what the experience of your idea is, we find video is the way to go. So we'll sit down, and every student has to make, every team of students has to make like a 3-minute video. So presentation day, instead of a bunch of hardware and a bunch of like black cloths being pulled up, is now, we pop popcorn, we load the video, the 3-minute videos, and we all sit there and play them, and then we can critique them one at a time, the whole class. But it's this prototyping is really this iterative way of painting a picture of the future.
Which leads to the final step, testing.
Testing. So it's not enough to build this prototype and think that it's okay, right? What you really have to do is bring the people it's going to matter. If we're building a new nurses station, we have to bring real nurses in and test it, and they'll have all kinds of good ideas about how to improve it, and then we go back and we cycle through. This whole thing is really a cycle all the way through.